WYPA Up Radio with MC8. Steele and Big James has taken over the radio station.
Well, all right, y'all. All across the USC, Compton, Watts, Bay to LA. Pomona, California, from valley to valley, we represent that killer Cali. So if you keeping it real on your side of your town, you tune in to Gangsta Chronicles.
Gangsta Chronicles, we gon' tell you how it goes.
If I lie, my nose will grow like Pinocchio. We gon' tell you the truth and nothing but the truth.
Gangsta Chronicles, this is not your average show.
You're now tuned into the real MC8, Big James, and Big Steele.
This is strictly from the streets.
Hello.
We represent the James.
Now, James just did something. I don't know if he did it on purpose or not. He just landed on something that we got to talk about in length and detail. That's Source Awards because, in my opinion, Death Row Records probably had the best performance ever at the Source Awards. When they came out with all the jail cells on the thing and everybody was out there, and you see RBX come out, because for some of them rappers that was on Death Row, that was people's first time actually getting to see them, perform. Mm-hmm. So when they came out on stage and everything, what was going through your mind when that whole night happened? Was it chaos? Was it tension in the air, man, the thick? Because we right in the middle of the war almost then. That's like right at the start of the war.
It was gang attention. I was there.
Yeah, well,
I presented an award there with Aaliyah that night.
Yeah, that was an interesting night.
There was gang attention. I had beef with Quick that night.
Right.
Yeah, it was tension in the building that night.
Oh, because that was the night that MC8, because he was up there with the whole crew of people, and you was sitting right in the stage.
I was right in the front.
Yeah, I didn't know they were going to do that though. I would have. I would have said something. They kind of threw that in because that wasn't part of the rehearsal.
Yeah, they tried to diss me.
About the wife or something.
Yeah, they tried to diss me on stage during the show. Yeah. And we was ready to fight. I had about 8 niggas with me.
Fiance, they did something about the fiance. Somebody recognized the fiance or some bullshit. Mm-hmm. And you heard the woos and the woes when he said it. Mm-hmm. So people was picking.
Yeah,
but what I will say is there wasn't tension going in there. Like a lot of people think about, kind of what you were saying. Like they think about the Source Awards as like the start of, where things, go left and everything that happens after that. But, I don't look at it like that. It's like, there was no tension. Pac was in jail, and going into that night, nobody knew that Pac was coming out and going to be on death row.
Right.
Okay, so Pac had his drama with, Big and Bad Boy that had been going on while he was in jail. But me putting the Source Awards together, I didn't see any, beefs. There was no problems at any point, between Death Row and Bad Boy at this point. Now, and then there's differing opinions. Like one of the things about that show, like that I noticed is, when you watch the '95 Source Awards, Bad Boy, the Death Row opens it and kills it with that performance. Mm-hmm. But before Suge goes on stage, there's a Bad Boy performance, a medley where he had everybody there too. Craig Mack, Total, Big, Little Kim, Junior Mafia. But at the beginning of that, Puff's kneeling on the stage and he's saying this on the spotlight, I live in the East and I'll die in the East. Now that's before Suge goes on stage. So I never had the opportunity to have this conversation with Suge. I hope, that I will one day to find this out. But in my mind, I'm thinking like that might have been something, that made him feel a certain way,
Probably definitely kicked it off.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you throwing darts then. You know what I mean? When you say,
right.
I live on the West and die on the West, you know what I'm saying?
We all know everything, that happened. But like we had talked about, I guess before we really got on air, it's like the real situation between Death Row and Bad Boy doesn't start until a month or so later when, Jake gets killed down in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. That's really the start of the violence, the drama, everything going crazy from there.
Now, we can talk about that a little bit because I didn't even know James at the time, but I remember when Jake got killed, it was a lot of, it was some real cats in the street talking about that because I remember one of my good homeboys, Crawford, he was mad as hell, tears flowing down his eyes. He came by my house when that happened. You know?
Jake was a real good dude, man. I knew Jake very well. You know, he was doing promotion for Death Row, and we used to, you know, talk a lot. And I would go see him when I came out, you know, visit out here, and you know, I had a lot of love for Jake. So yeah, that hurt, you know, when we lost him.
Now, what's going through your mind, man? Because I've had them situations, you know, to where you're sitting home listening to something, you know, you're listening to it, and it's like in the moment, it ain't like you can stop it because all this stuff is actually happening right now. When you saw Suge go up there and say, and you knew where he was going, if you don't want the executive producer dancing all in the videos, right, was your heart just beating like, oh man, it's about to go down?
I mean, you know, of course I was like, oh man, what, you know, the room, definitely. You know, the room got loud, you know, because, you know, he kind of got booed, you know, because it's 5,000 people in there. You got maybe not even 1,000 in the front. That's the industry people, but the rest is people from New York.
Exactly.
You know, who bought tickets to sit in the back and upstairs and everything. So, you know, I was in the back of the theater, like just walking around. I would, you know, be just trying to check the temperature, see what was going on out in the crowd. So I kind of remember, you know, hearing that and the commotion, and I, you know, made a beeline to get backstage. And you know, Suge and his guys, like the back of the theater in the garden, it's like stairs that go up and down to different, you know, levels of the backstage and dressing rooms and shit like that. I just remember going over on that side, and it was like 50 guys just running up and down the stairs, like, you know, kind of causing a ruckus, just yelling, screaming, whatever. And then Puff was over on the other side of the stage, and I went over to the other side of the stage. He had a bunch of people around him, and he was really upset about it. And you know, but he decided to kind of take the higher ground, you know, and not, you know, respond or whatever, and he calmed down. And, you know, so there wasn't no, you know, there was tension, but it wasn't even a punch thrown that night that I've ever heard of, you know. And sometimes people just make it out like it was much more, and make it out, you know, like that's really what caused everything that happened afterwards. And, you know, to me, that's part of the history that, you know, I want to try to get told correctly and get out there.
Yeah, because I've heard through the years, about a girl claimed that she got slapped with a bottle or something like that outside the Source Award. Somebody got cracked with a bottle or something like that, so that wasn't true.
No, I don't think being inside, I don't think I witnessed any actual scrapping or actual fighting. So... But it was serious tension. And that's serious tension.
And that's a good thing, man. So now the war is on. And you're right, it just didn't start that night. It had been bubbling kind of, because if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, James, but Suge and Puffy was actually hanging out pretty tough at one point, wasn't they?
Yep.
They was hanging out, you know, they was boys, so that probably was Puff shocked, like, man, this is supposed to be my man, and he up here, you know what I'm saying? Right. Dissing or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
It was at that point, Suge wanted to control.
Yeah, James, like, I don't, you know, like I said, I never had no problems with Suge. I've had talks with Suge and all that. What sparked him to do that night?
It was just a takeover. It was just, you know, I'm finna step on people's toes. I don't know what it was. I think Suge wanted something out of Puffy, and Puffy was like, that ain't happening. You know, he actually stood up to him. And that was a sign like, who the fuck this nigga think he is? So Suge felt a certain kind of way. And then shit just started happening. I think it was more he say, she say bullshit that was going back and forth from New York to us. And Suge was getting it. And it was only one way to reply to that shit. Okay, let's start poking needles at motherfuckers. Let's start being disrespectful.
And then you couple that with the Tupac stuff, because I don't heard, there's so many stories about that, you don't know what's true or not true unless you was there, you know what I mean? Because I know Biggie and Tupac at one time was running tough.
Sure.
Because I could swear DJ Bobcat is my god brother. You know, DJ Bobcat is my god brother. And he did a lot of work with Tupac prior to him coming with, you know, Death Row, like them early albums before Tupac became the iconic dude he was. And I remember a few times actually seeing Biggie with Tupac, but this is back before either of them dudes was who they were. So now the war is kicked off, man. Everything is crazy. How did that impact you doing business? You know, business still moving on, of course, but now everybody ultra sensitive. So if it look like you picking a side, have you ever got accused of picking a side?
No, again, you know, that's just something I really try to navigate very carefully. Just, you know, that kind of, you know, sensitivity to situations, you know, not wanting to ever be in a position of, you know, inflaming a situation. With, you know, one of the things that I did in 96, you know, while this stuff was going on, I mean, we couldn't do a Source Awards. That, you know, it just wasn't the environment to do that. So it did put a stop to that. But I did a cover with Suge in the summer of 96, the one, you know, where he's sitting on a Rolls Royce. And, you know, get a real in-depth interview. But on the front cover, you'll see it says Suge Knight, and then in quotes, it ain't no East Coast, West Coast thing, which was a quote from him in the article. So to me, that was something to try to get that message out there to people. Like, this isn't an East-West thing. This is, you know, obviously it's something, you know, it's a personal thing, you know, that was going on. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's an example of a way that I would try to, you know, help a situation if I could, you know, like that. And just not get into just printing a bunch of, you know, inflammatory shit that's going to end up, you know, leading to, you know, some real consequences.
Yeah, people don't do that today because people are printing any damn thing not knowing it could get motherfuckers knocked down.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So now we going through all that stuff, man. Then you had a whole thing that happens in the night of Las Vegas. You know, in Las Vegas when Tupac got killed, right? And I think that's when everything kind of slowed down from there. You know what I'm saying? Kind of slowed down. Then Biggie got killed, right? And that's when everybody was kind of like, man, this shit is real. You know what I mean? And that shit I don't think had nothing to do with no hip hop. I think that was all some other shit going on, you know?
Why not?
Huh?
Why not?
I just don't think it was about the music, man. I think it was a lot of other shit involved in it.
Well, you got two guys that's turning and found a way to make money with record sales and everything else, and they called it a beef. So now they got neighborhoods fighting against each other.
That's what I'm saying.
So they turned it into a gang banging on wax type of shit. Mm-hmm. So now you got the Bloods and the Crips fighting, and people was loving it and eating this shit up and buying all the music they can buy from both sides. So what they wanted to do, it worked because they made a gang of money off this shit doing this beef. So you can't go and tell everybody we rehearsing this shit. We ain't really doing it for real, but this is just a show to make money. So all the guys in Compton, all the guys in New York, all the guys in the South Sides and everybody else, they believe in this shit is real.
But that's what I'm saying. So it turned to some street shit.
So when it turned opposed, but it got music motherfuckers. It got rappers involved, and they've been involved, and they the biggest ones promoting "I hate you, fuck you, I'll fuck your wife" bullshit. Who's gonna react to that? The nigga that they talking about. Mm-hmm. And they eating this shit up. So here they are fighting and going at war. But now it's in the streets.
Yeah, it was some real shit, man, because me and Big Tyrus, Big Psych, rest in peace, that was like my brother. And, you know, he had told me a story about, you know, seeing Faith in the actual hotel. I won't get into that right now, but it was some real darts being thrown. Like, motherfuckers really was doing some mania-ass shit, you know, trying to one-up the next man. So you can't tell me that you didn't hear all this shit going on behind the scenes when you was up in the magazine, man?
Oh, man. I mean,
Dave, you keep it real here, man. I'm gonna go get you some ice, man, and pour you a drink, man. Go on and let it out, dog.
That nigga still is a goddamn fool, lady. Let me pour you a drink.
Hey, but look at it though. But for real, the only thing that matters is that he didn't put the bullshit.
Yeah, he didn't print
magazine.
it. And that's one thing I was going to commend you on, because you could have probably sold a couple million extra magazines by just putting certain little things that you don't heard. You could have made a lot of money. And you
bullshit controversy.
And you know,
Yeah.
us here doing what we do, it's a lot of shit we keep up under wraps that could be shit like, man, if we put this out, it's gonna blow up. But we know the repercussions of talking about certain shit. You know, everything ain't cool to put out in public.